The endospore stain is a little bit of a tricky stain. It's also a differential stain because we're going to differentiate cells based on the presence or absence of endospores. Right, so in this case, the positive would be the endospore, the negative would be the cell. Right, our primary stain in this case now is malachite green. It's there it is. It's green, and which means then, of course, the positive or the endospore is going to stain green. Our counter stain is safranin. It's the same thing that we just used with the gram stain. Right, so then our cells will color pink. Right, so that's what we're going to look for: green endospores, pink cells. Now, like we talked about, or we're going to talk about, endospores are very hard to stain because of the fact that they're so dense and they have a very tough coat. So what we're going to use is we're going to use some boiling water, or the steam from the boiling water, to allow us to force or loosen up the endospores, to force the stain in. And also time, right? So normally we go do the 1 minute stain. In this case now it's a 5 minute, right? So let's place our slide over there. It's not super hot, so don't worry too much about it. We're gonna let it sit over that steam heat. And again, make sure sample side is up, right? And I can tell because of my labels. And I'm gonna flood it with malachite. Just my 2 smears. I have 2 smears on it. Just like that. So this is going to take, excuse me, this is going to take 5 minutes. Now, we're not going to wait the whole 5 minutes because that's just much too long. But I do want you guys to just be aware that when you guys are doing your endospore stain, you have to watch it. Right? Because of the fact that it's sitting for so long, because it's overheat and the steam makes everything run, that will eventually dry out. Right? So you just kind of watch it, and if it ever looks like it's starting to dry out, just add a little bit more malachite green to each side, prevent it from drying. Because once it dries, then you're not going to have to rinse it. And it gets all sticky and gross, and then you will have a very poor stain to look at. Now, while you're waiting, also make one of these things, right? Because we're going to walk around the lab with our slides, and we do not want to spill this malachite green all over the place. And there's plenty of evidence that it's already been here, right? So just please carry around your slide with this paper towel. When you're done, just take your slide, place it over your paper towel like that, right? Because we're going to walk around with this, and look at all that drips already, right? If I didn't put this paper towel on there, this stuff would have dripped everywhere. Okay, now walk it over to the sink. So let's walk it over to the sink. You guys have to come with me. And here we are now at the sink, right? So now we are at a staining station, and at this stage now we can simply rinse our slide. Alright, so like before, just rinse, not much different. Alright, so our endospore now has taken up the malachite green, so have the cells. Alright, so now what we want to do is that we're going to counter stain. Alright, and the counter stain serves two purposes. First off, what the counter stain is going to do is it's going to malachite green is kind of a weak binding dye. So what the safranin does is it replaces the malachite green in the cells with the safranin. So our safranin does two things. It's first of all, it's actually going to be our decolorizer. Right? So it decolorizes our cells because it's going to remove the malachite green from the cells, and it acts as a counter stain, right? Because we want our cells to look different from our primary stain. Now the interesting thing is, because of the endospore, because of its coat, the safranin can't penetrate that endospore, right? So even though it can decolorize the cells, it won't decolorize the endospore. So what we're going to end up with is pink cells with green endospores in the middle. Now a nice healthy population of cells isn't going to have too many endospores, right? So you'd expect anywhere from about 1 to 10% of the cells have endospores, and typically they'll be inside the cells. Once your population starts to get very stressed, food starts to run out or gets very old, then the population shifts a little bit, and typically a lot more cells will have endospores. And if it's stressed enough, we're actually going to have a lot of dead cells, and we're going to see endospores outside of the cell. So what you'll see is those green endospores not enclosed in pink. Okay. Now, what does an endospore look like? It's going to be smaller than a cell, and it's going to be very ovally. Okay, so it's going to have a very defined shape, not splotches of green. So typically when you are staining things, you'll find splotches of green like that. Malachite green just kind of gets on everything. it's not going to be a splotch of green. It's going to be a very distinct oval shape. Right? So that's kind of what we're looking for. As with everything, we are going to rinse this off. Rinse on both sides. Tap. Cloth dry. Ready for view.